Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. It's Tracy Abbott from Microlink. Welcome to our webinar on disability confident leadership, why you should do it, what it's all about. Really delighted. I've got a couple of guests today, but we've got a couple of housekeeping issues. If you need captions, there's the closed caption button on your screen. If you push, it will give you the captions. We will be recording this session, and we will be sending it out to everybody who has attended and indeed everybody who's registered, along with some collateral from both the Young Epilepsy that Tudor's from and Angelica, who's come from the lovely Genius Within that we work with. So without further ado, this is going to be an hour session. If you've got any questions, please pop them in the chat. We'll get to them. If I do miss anything, I have Azadeh help from our marketing team who'll be looking at that for us as well. So I wanted to start with asking you, Angelica, if you could just do a brief outline of who you are, who Genius Within are, and then Tudor will move to you if that's all right.
Yes, so I'm Angelica Simpson. I'm the head of HR at Genius Within. Genius Within is a CIC founded in 2011 by Professor Nancy Doyle. We are a psychology-led business that specialises in neurodiversity. So we work doing coaching on a one-to-one basis in group settings. We also do training and consultancy with organisations on neuro-inclusive organisations. So that's who we are in a nutshell. But yeah, I've been at Genius Within for 3 years, so looking after all of the attraction, recruitment, retention of our internal staff who are 68% majority neurodivergent and or disabled. So yeah, so a lot of everything
Wonderful.
we do.
Thanks, Angelica. Tudor.
Hi, yeah, I'm a Tudor. I'm the Diversity, Inclusion and Engagement Officer for Young Epilepsy. And Young Epilepsy is a charity that supports young people with epilepsy and other neurological conditions. So the main part of our charity is a residential school and college in Surrey. So we have over 500 members of staff based on our campus in Surrey. It's a 24-hour position. 24-hour sort of facility. Facility, that's the
Yeah.
word. With nursing staff, 24-hour round the clock support. We also have a nationwide branch of our charity that run youth support groups, a youth voice network, sort of engaging in advocacy for young people with epilepsy. And we also have a research centre that to sort of research into the medications and things like that for for epilepsy. And I am based within HR, and I lead our diversity and inclusion strategy.
Wonderful, thank you. And they've been talking recently. One of the reasons I don't have a screen behind me is the fact that they're saying now that where you've got the cutout around your body and the light when you move can actually induce epilepsy in some people because of the flickering of the lights behind you. So it's something we don't commonly think about, but really important. Thank you ever so much for being with us today. One of the reasons I was saying to these two wonderful people earlier that I'd asked them to come on this particular disability confident leader, why you should do it, why is it important, is it straightforward, what the costs are, what's involved. I actually validated both Genius Within and Young Epilepsy, which I do moving to disability confident leadership level. And both of the organisations showed an outstanding grasp of what was needed and had put an enormous amount of effort into doing this project, but actually making it a living document. And it's something we'll go on to a bit later, but a lot of people will talk about the old two-tick system, as was. This superseded it in 2015, I think I'm right in saying. And previously it was synonymous with kind of a tick box exercise. And I think both of you'd agree it's far from a tick box exercise within your own organisations. Angelica, can you tell me a little bit about why Genius Within have done it? And I have to preface this with, if you don't use Genius Within, please go and use them because they're amazing. They're really good at what they do in supporting neurodiverse colleagues.
Yeah, so it's all about universal design and, making sure that we're inclusive for everybody, giving everybody a fair and equitable opportunity. So, we really advocate for our employees, as well as people coming into the business, as well as the clients that we work with. We advocate on behalf of those and obviously those within the community as well. So it's just a whole piece of work around advocacy and ensuring that we're walking our own talk. So we will go out, do training consultancy, but obviously we have to ensure that we're doing that inside as well as outside.
Yeah. And Tudor, for yourself?
Yeah, we decided to go ahead with it because it's a charity that supports disabled young people. We realised that we are excellent at supporting the young people, but there was a lot of work to be done in supporting our staff. We were sort of specialised in supporting disabled young people, but actually for each other. It was quite surprising, really, actually, how little support we had for our disabled staff. We knew that we weren't retaining our disabled staff, which is, I don't know, when I started a couple of years ago, I found it quite shocking, actually, what you would expect our disability support to be really good. So it was our sort of first step, really, to make sure that we're showing the expertise that we've got externally, and we put that expertise internally as well.
And it does. I think both of you would say that it's been hard work. It is a journey, isn't it? What would you say would be the most difficult thing, Tudor, do you think?
I would say the most difficult thing that I found was engaging our higher level managers and our trustees. I think at first these sort of initiatives weren't necessarily seen as a priority. There were lots of other sort of things going on, but actually it needed to be a priority. Things like getting our trust board to do disability awareness training was really, really difficult, even though it's such a simple thing. Yeah, so for me, that's what I found hardest. We've got through them now. We've got a lot. I find our high level managers, our execs, and our trustees supportive now. But it did take some time to get through to them for them to realise that it should be a priority.
Does it get them engaged with what you're doing more wholesale?
Yes.
Because if they understand the challenges that young people face going into the world of work, it must make it easier for them to make changes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, they're more visible as well. So I think before our trustees were quite disengaged from day-to-day life at Young Epilepsy, but now they're sort of more part of the organisation, I would say.
How nice. So they've actually felt embraced by it and they've embraced it back in turn.
Yeah.
That's really good to hear. I mean, obviously, Angelica, a different setup. You're doing it for your internal staff, which is a really good reason to do Disability Confident. How do you think it actually reflects externally for you as a supplier to other companies?
I would say, I think as part of your whole employer reputation, your brand, you should be, shouting about, what we do. So we do Disability Confident, we do ethnicity pay gap reporting. There's so many things that we do. And the reason why we do it internally, but from an external point of view, we encourage others to do the same to create that equitable playing field for everybody. So when we're doing things that we do externally, it's to kind of, I'd say, kind of encourage others. So encourage other small businesses, medium-sized businesses, because a lot of the times can be a lot of large corporate organizations that do these things, but it's about encouraging everybody to get on board and make those changes, because if we don't work to put in these changes in place, and things won't change, and it won't be a fair and equitable working organisation or working environment for anyone. And we know that disability can affect people at any stage. And I think the BDF, there's a stat, isn't there, that the average age of a disability is 53, I think.
Yeah. So, and 70% of us during our working life, 1 in 5 of us will have a mental health condition or episode, shall we say, more precisely, during our working life. And I think particularly with the neurodiversity side and neurodivergent colleagues, the incidence of a mental health condition with neurodiversity, sort of if you've been recently diagnosed, what you need to do to kind of almost get over that grief factor to understand yourself and move forward. So I find when there's 3 levels for people who are listening in, that there is the level 1, 2, and 3, I can't remember what they're actually named. I should do. But level 1, you sign up for and you say you're making a commitment. That's the end of it. There's no hassle. There's no auditing. Nobody externally looks at what you do. Level 2 is a little bit more, you're asked to actually look at employing disabled people and actively doing that. Level 3 is a different kettle of fish, because you're being looked at by an external person, somebody like myself. There's a few validators who are around. We will actually go through the ups and downs, the ins and outs of your policies and procedures, and we will look at the evidence. It's all evidence-based. And one of the probably more common thing is that I hear is people say that disability confident has no teeth, and it doesn't have any teeth. I mean, if I'd come along having validated you, Angelica, and then found you, I don't know, turned every disabled person away at the door and said, no, thank you very much, you wouldn't necessarily lose your validation. You certainly wouldn't get sued or taken to court or anything like that. However, you do measure these things, don't you? You are able to say, we now improve our numbers of people we bring in, and certainly the number of people we retain. Tudor, you told me something, it was a huge percentage jump on the retention of your staff, just through doing it. Well, you do a lot of other things as well, but doing this.
Yeah, so we had a big issue a couple of years ago with the retention of staff, where I think it was, I can't remember the exact figure, but it was 20 to 25% of our staff stayed within the organisation 12 months or less. And
Wow.
since it's disability confident, we've done a lot of sort of our EDI strategy, and from that it's massively jumped, and I think it's down to sort of about 15% now of our staff only stay 12 months. So
I mean, that's a huge saving in human capital, isn't it? Let alone the money.
Yeah, and everything's increased. So our engagement's gone up. We've started the employee resource groups, which we didn't have before. And when we started off, they were very, very low attended. But now quite a lot of our employee resource groups are sort of thriving now, really. We've got our disability.
Does it actually give you? Sorry, I interrupted.
Right.
Please do carry on. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Is it something, because in my mind, when I'm looking at validating people,
Yeah.
I can actually see it as a framework. Does it give you like a journey that you can go on with your business?
Yeah.
Because so where do you start with it?
Yeah, we've got our employee resource groups that then sort of report up. One person from each resource group reports up to a main EDI working group. So we've got one representative of each, and then we report directly up to Trust Board. So it's sort of like a little pyramid of report, really. That means that the Trust Board are really involved in what we're doing, but then day-to-day staff. So just for an example, so our disability network at the moment is doing some work around neurodiversity, because it's something that we're lacking in, and they're creating a neurodiversity policy that we don't have.
Fabulous.
Yeah, so it's great. So staff with lived experience are sort of helping to write this report and then reporting straight up to Trust Board, which is really great.
So where did you start, Angelica?
So when I've been at Genius Within 3 years, and they'd already had the accreditation, but I think when I came in, it was kind of fresh pair of eyes reviewing the process that was already there. So like I say, it was already started, we already were accredited, but for me, it was that whole onboarding piece, the attraction. So what are we doing to bring people, for people to know that we are disability confident, accredited, and we invite people into the organisation. So we do video adverts. I looked at the onboarding pack. Everyone gets a onboarding pack. Within that, there is a welcome letter telling you the time to, whether you're meeting with your manager, whether it's virtually, in person, the business dress, as well as like a picture, like a pack of who your team are, who your buddy is. So it was all of the things that you need to help you to get into the organisation. So I reviewed it from the kind of attraction and onboarding piece, because we had quite a lot of the other things in place already. So it was, what do you need? How will you feel comfortable? Because when you're looking at a company, are you looking, like, for me, it's like, can I see myself working there? So having that kind of lived experience on our on our website, with a lot of like about us, who we are as a business, helps people to identify with your company. So it was, having more of that representation on our website was a big one. And then with the video interviews, that was another kind of look at like an advert. It was another kind of view of it being inclusive. So not everybody wants to read through a application form or complete it. So we do a video advert, say we're looking for this role. This is what the role is. I'm the hiring manager. And then within that, we always talk about if you need any reasonable adjustments, please let us know. So again, broadcasting that we do offer reasonable adjustments. It's not, an issue or a problem if you need those. And we also, if you do come through to us, we kind of give examples of the reasonable adjustments we've put in place before as well, because some people don't always know the reasonable adjustments that they want or need. So
they don't even know that phrase, do they?
Yeah.
Often.
Yeah. So it's just about like shouting about what you do really on a day-to-day basis and giving that insight into what the process will be. So within our adverts, we give the dates of when the interviews are going to take place. Once you get your invitation, and we talk about who's going to be interviewing. It's just all of those things where people become anxious within the recruitment process. So
but that's not just neurodiversity. It's everybody. This is what I love.
Literally.
This is across the board.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like to know who I'm meeting. I don't know about you guys, but I go onto LinkedIn, I have a look at their profile, I have a look at what jobs they do, what their hobbies are. So I find a connection point.
Yeah.
So to actually be presented with that, and one of the things about your validation completely was the fact that you get your line managers, and you said that was a bit of a journey to get them to do it.
Yeah.
But they stand up and they talk about the job.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we first kind of introduced video adverts, and I was like, oh, I have to put my face out there. And I was like, yeah, because at least then you're the person that will be interviewing, you're the person that will be reporting into. So already they're getting insight into the employee journey with you. And it's also really inclusive because, like I say, we can be excluding people by having just set ways of applying and putting our jobs out, as well as just using Even Break as a
Even Break are great, by the way.
Yeah, so we
really
always make sure that we put our jobs on there as well. So again, that's another space where if you are disabled, you're likely to look. So if we're just putting jobs in places where we're not gaining that accessibility to everybody, then we're already excluding those people. So it's just looking at where we can advertise.
And why would you do that? I mean, I know it can be daunting, and certainly some companies that you talk to will be saying, well, we don't employ anybody who's disabled. I kid you not, I've been into big organizations. They go, no, Trace, no, we don't need any of that because we're just not a disabled company. And it's like you'll have mental health, you'll have neurodivergence. I mean, they're reckoning now on it going up percentage-wise to as high as 40% of your workforce, which would make a lot more sense than saying it's only 2 or 3 people. We've got a blend, a mix of neurotypicals and neurodivergence, for example. So it is really interesting. The thing for me, as I said, it's a framework that you can use. We've got somebody, the jobs board, Even Break, Joe. It's a company called Even Break. It's run by Jane Hatton. It's completely run by disabled people. It's a kick, which is always nice to see. And they've got employee hubs, which are really interesting. So they invite employees to actually get together to talk to each other about the sort of things that you're telling people, Angelica, that you're being very open about. So, like you might go onto Glassdoors, for example, to look up how they treat graduates, what the pay is, what kind of questions they're going to ask, instead of actually looking at the whole process of recruitment as some kind of test, like a little crystal maze that you have to get through. You're being really explicit and welcoming. I mean, I often talk about when I first started work, I actually left school at 16, which I know you can't do anymore, but I'm quite old. And nobody told me that when you go to work, you dress in a certain way. I didn't have those clothes. I still don't particularly have those clothes, but I turn up in like a bright orange jumpsuit because nobody told me when I was working for NatWest Bank I should have been suited and booted and how to behave. So giving people that leg up, I absolutely loved. Now, Tudor, I mean, what do you do around recruitment at Young Epilepsy?
Yeah, I mean, we've recently just changed all of our systems. So it was around the same time that we did the disability confident leader application. We had a brand new system in place. So we got a couple of people from Surrey Coalition of Disabled People went through the recruitment system for us just to make sure it was accessible. There was someone that was blind that went through the system to make sure it's all compatible with their screen readers and things like that.
Very important.
Yeah, and we had someone with a physical disability go through sort of like a mock interview process to make sure that we offered, sort of we were outright offering any adjustments that were needed, things like that, to make sure that it was all okay. And they gave us a set of recommendations that were put in place. One of the things that we did following that is we've got like a clause within our applications that if you disclose disability and you meet the minimum criteria for the job role, you're automatically offered an interview. And I don't know if you remember, Tracy, that's something that we spoke about with you for quite a while, because we don't want to be offering people interviews and then say, oh, thank you, actually, but you're not right for the job. You don't actually meet the criteria for the job. We've looked at our job reviews and really job descriptions, and we've really simplified it to exactly what we need. And then if people do meet the criteria for the job and do have a disability, they are automatically invited into an interview. And that has actually been working really well. We've had quite a few people come in for interview and been successful for jobs through that
That's
path,
wonderful.
really good. Yeah.
And the thing about all of this is none of this is about bleeding hearts and liberals. None of this is done because both of you are charities. You're doing this from the business perspective of making it as equitable and as open to the talent that you're looking to recruit and retain.
Yeah,
because otherwise, why would you do it?
Yeah, we also had to do some training with our hiring managers because we had so there was definitely bias within the interview process. So we had my deaf colleague, I use her as an example quite a lot. So when she applied, there was she's a support worker working with young people with communication difficulties. There was very much a feeling from hiring managers, about how can she possibly do this job? She can't do this job as a deaf person. It's just not possible. I can't understand how she can do it. And looking at her job history, she'd been doing this sort of job for the last 15 years.
Oh, wow.
We had to do quite a lot of work around actually, you put your own opinion, put your own biases aside. You're assuming she can't do this job, but you haven't actually seen her in action. And she's come in and she's already senior support worker. She's already had promotions and she's doing really, really well. But if we hadn't done that piece of work, she probably wouldn't have even been offered an interview. So yeah,
because it's interesting, the gap, isn't it, between you guys at the front end of making this happen, of making it an equitable experience, and actually what your recruiters might be doing and what your hiring managers might be doing, because very often they're the people that are probably time poor, I'm going to say, being generous, so they don't get round to doing the training. And they're often, certainly with recruiters, they can be a lot younger than the average age within a firm. And invariably, they might not have the same understanding of disability because they don't have any lived experience. So they can be a little bit dismissive sometimes, or find it a little bit difficult to explain to a line manager why they want that disabled person to go through, when the line manager's going, oh, for goodness sake. I mean, I had an example recently of another deaf colleague, actually, who really good with Excel, but when he was trying to go through their prescribed process, they had set tests that they standardized, but the tests were written in really tricksy English. And I can't do Excel, but I'm reading the actual words to try and make them into plain English. And I really struggled with them. And I thought, crikey, if you've got English as a second language, BSL as your first, if you come to the country and you've got another language, your French before your English, and you've got all of these things to compete with, why are we not making it as simple as possible for people with the right talent? And it's always with that caveat, they've got to be able to do the job.
Yeah.
But you're finding that you're balancing that well, aren't you? I mean, Angelica, what do you think it's had the knock-on effect with retention within Genius Within?
Yeah, definitely. I think for us, we do a lot of we were always asking for feedback, so the voice of the employee is really important. So yeah, we have the lived experience of our employees, and they are always included in any kind of new processes. And like you speaking about the way things are worded, our policies. When I first started, I wrote a policy, and it was like, no, we don't do it like that here, because it's about that, can have a policy.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
yeah,
jargon, there's
yeah,
clauses.
yeah,
You read it and
yeah,
you're like, I have no clue what this means. Whereas at Genius Within,
absolutely.
our policies are very clear. So it's in plain English, so that people can
Mm.
read it, understand exactly what's expected of them without it being any kind of jargon and things to trip people up. So I had to quickly learn how to kind of demystify the policies and things that we put in place, because that's what I'd done in previous organizations. And now, like, I enjoy writing a policy at Genius Within because it's just very straightforward. We're telling you exactly what's required. We use just clear language. You know what's required of you, and that's it. So yeah, I think that's a really important point, is just making it as easy as possible so that people understand exactly
And
what
why
is required
wouldn't
of
you?
them. Yeah.
Can you describe, we've just had Marius, thank you for the question, asking if people understand the difference between equality and equity, because most people use equality rather than equity, and I tend to use equity rather than equality. Would you like to explain that, Angelica? Are you
So,
happy giving an explanation?
yeah, a very warbled one, but the way I
No,
see it
that's
is that
fine. Yeah, yeah.
like, everybody has a pair of shoes. That's absolutely fine. So that's everybody has a pair of shoes. That's equality. But everybody has a different type of shoe dependent on their needs. That's the
Mm.
equity piece. So someone might have a platform because they need to see.
They do the height,
They need the
absolutely.
height.
Yeah.
Somebody might have a wide fitting shoe because of the width of their the width of their feet. So it's about equity is about adjusting it to the needs of that individual, not just giving them what they need. It's about,
Because it's not always that
yeah,
level playing field, is it?
yeah,
Sometimes
no,
people talk about the level playing field, which is the equality, which is the pair of shoes. The equity is raising that end of it for that
yeah,
person who needs a little bit of extra help.
yeah,
It's not
definitely.
cheating. It's
No,
something I'm really, really clear on. It's like giving people questions up front in interviews. It's not cheating. Yes, now in the days of AI, people can take those questions and develop really good answers that aren't necessarily their own answers, but you're the good recruiter. You're going to be able to sniff that out and look at it. So,
yeah.
in terms of, can I ask, it's a difficult thing to quantify sometimes, but the monetary, what it's cost you to do it. Tudor, have you got any idea? Do you cost it
Mm.
out?
No, so we haven't costed it out, but as a charity, um, or the financial side is quite difficult. So the actual cost of the assessment for disability confident leader isn't that much. I think it's about £600. But we did look at some systems and things like that to put in place that would support us that were too financially costly. I
Yeah.
think you can do so many things that all just
Mm-hmm.
cost so much money. And as a charity, my budget is very, very small, so we couldn't put them in place. So I have spent a lot of time looking at how we could do things in-house rather than
Mm-hmm. Good
externally to
idea.
save the
Yeah.
cost. So we do all of our training is done in-house. We sort of use the expertise that we've got within the organisation to do our training. We've written like a collaboration between quite a few people. We've put together an unconscious bias training session for all
Wonderful.
staff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is obviously some things that we do need to do externally. We're just looking at a new platform to do an EDI surveys for our staff that will be done
Oh,
once every
interesting.
6 months,
Yeah.
which do need to be done externally. But the actual cost of the disability confident, I couldn't put a price on it, but we didn't spend too much money on it because we don't have that budget available. So you can do it and not have that big budget. It is possible to do it.
For me, it looks like the biggest challenge is getting the engagement of people to get the information to provide the evidence,
Yeah, it's
because it can be
time.
quite a
I
lot of
think,
documents. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's what I think. If you cost it, it's going to be costed in time. Really, it took a lot of time to get the evidence together. It took a lot of time to get like you say, the engagement from staff and for staff to actually realise what you're doing and want to sort of support that. That's what took time. But cost wise, it was just the cost of the actual assessment, really.
And I think
We
on that, interestingly, when we hear about reasonable adjustments, I think that sends shivers through a lot of people, thinking there is going to be a lot of cost involved. Whereas
Yeah.
for us, what we define as a reasonable adjustment is providing those interview questions in advance, offering a virtual interview instead of an in-person interview if somebody has difficulty getting into the office where we're running the interviews from. So there's not always a cost to it, but it's just about offering that. So for us, the feed we very rarely we offer reasonable adjustments, but we don't have many people say this, I need this or something different to what we already offer.
Yeah.
And that's why we offer it to everyone, because it's going to help everyone. And we get a lot of feedback, and kind of, for me, like I say, we're always asking for feedback. So when you come, we've started doing recruitment.
It's really important, that feedback.
Yeah, so we do a recruitment survey. So if you've had an interview with us, we ask, what worked well, what didn't work well, what would work better. So we continuously have that review of what we're doing. So there are things that may cost, so equipment and things like that. There's also access to work, and that, I know that you'll talk about, Tracy, but what I'd like to just reiterate is that when we speak about reasonable adjustment, it's not always a cost to the business. It's just, sometimes the cost is just time, and getting that engagement is the biggest kind of cost to it, but it's worth it.
Thank you. Tashin, I may have pronounced that incorrectly. You're asking about interviews. If you're struggling with coping with the amount of work needed, how can you support yourself? And what and where can you get for supporting for interviews? There is actually, it ties in with what Angelica just mentioned, the Access to Work service. If you have a mental health condition, or you are visually impaired or hearing impaired, then Access to Work will support you and fund a support worker to help you go through an interview. So they will actually do that, and you apply for that grant for yourself. So that's not something you apply through an employer for. So what you can do is, if you were going to go and work with Genius Within, you could go and you could speak to somebody like Angelica and say, what support is available for me going through the interview process? And they will talk you through it. And often it's kind of the understanding. And again, it comes back to what Tudor and Angelica have done. They've made it very, very clear what the process is. They document it. It's everywhere. You can see it visually. You can hear it audibly through the videos. And then you can see it written down. So you can see sort of like little infographics to tell you what the journey will be about. That helps reduce the stress and strain when people are coming through, because you're not mentally trying to prepare for any kind of surprise. You're just going there to talk about yourself and do your best. So Tashin, I don't know whether that answers your question, but there are a lot of, if you go on to things like Glassdoor as a candidate, and you want to prepare to go and work at a company or go for an interview at a company, there will be reviews left, a bit like TripAdvisor or on Amazon, Google, wherever else. There will be a lot of information about the interviews with less forthcoming companies than Genius Within or Young Epilepsy. You will find people who put up there the typical questions asked, the typical answers, the kind of clothes that you wear, how to get there. I mean, one of the big issues that I'd always say, if you're opening your doors equitably, please put up pictures of where the local bus station is, where the local cab company is, where the local toilets are. There's a great tool, I'm always mentioning it, called Welcome. So it's wel.co.me. It's a really good value for money product. I've got it on my phone. If a company uses it, I can actually look them up on my phone and say, I'm coming to see you tomorrow. I need a disabled wheelchair access. I don't, but just for examples. And I'm diabetic, so please can you point me to the loo when I get in? And I'd love a cup of coffee, if that's okay. It sends it off a little message to your reception. Reception gets it. There's a little picture of me. And when I turn up tomorrow, I can push a button to say, I'm here. Can you help me into the building? And I'll get helped in. I'll get shown to the loos. I'll get my coffee, and then I get taken to the interview. It makes the whole process effortless. And that's what you want. You want people to be able to shine and thrive when they come in, show you their best. Otherwise, you're just going to think, crikey, that Tracy was really, really twitchy. I don't know what was wrong with her. The reality was I really needed to go for a wee. Sorry to be so graphic, but it's to try and illustrate the point. So what we found, and certainly what I found in my experience, there's over, I think it's 17,500. I'll look to the chat. I don't know whether Anna can put that in. people who are actively on the Disability Confident newsletter round. There's a lot of free resource on the government website around what you can do. There's all sorts of frameworks, but two that I will run past you that can help you on the journey is BDF do a framework for people who are members or partners. And you've also got, there's a lady called Jodie Greer from Be People Smart, and that's B # People Smart as one word, Jodie Greer. And she does a free maturity model. And even if you stripped out and just took the recruitment piece out and maybe your website accessibility, and you looked at that, it gives you the gradated view of where you should be on your journey to become disability confident, which I absolutely love. So give me an idea of what were your biggest challenges, Angelica? I mean, doing it the second time, was it easier? You weren't there the first time, but was it fairly smooth? Or did you find the growth meant you had to find more information and evidence?
Yeah, so you kind of, it's a nice process because you think, wow, like when you're doing it every day,
How
you don't
much do you
really
do?
realize, you
Yeah.
don't realize. So it makes you sit back and look at your processes, and it's a good kind of recognition piece of the good work that you're doing. But yeah, you do need, there's a lot, I think that mine was 32 pages
Yeah.
in total,
Yes.
wasn't it?
Yes.
So yeah, so there's a lot of information. And it also, I think for me as well, it kind of reminds me of the things that we're committing to ensure that we're carrying it forward. Because, like you say, it's not just a tick box exercise. So that's something that we're always reviewing. Because, like I say, making sure that you're using the recruitment partners and keeping that relationship, it holds you accountable to ensure that, as you're going through the regular kind of run-of-the-mill working weeks, that you are staying true to what you've committed to doing. So I think I think for me it was just the amount of work that we had to put in, but it was also very nice to see that actually we have actually made improvements on what was already a good process. Because I think we kind of included like an employee support assessment that we now do,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
using our Genius Finder Pro tool, that every employee, whether you don't have to disclose, every employee does our assessment. And what that does is it's six questions, answer them, and then at the end of it, you kind of get a kind of overview of report of your strengths and any areas that you may find challenging with some strategies. So what that does for our hiring managers is understand us straight away when they get a new person on board, what their strengths are and what areas they may need support in. So rather than, thinking, okay, how are they with organizational skills? We've actually got an assessment that tells you how they are. So for us, it's about being preventative rather than reactive. So doing that assessment is not waiting for someone to start to have issues, with organization and time management.
Yeah.
We're putting those strategies in from the beginning. So it's looking at any kind of ways where you can just be, supportive from the get-go. So we kind of say we just want to support everyone to work at their best, and we won't know how to do that if we don't ask everyone. And it's not just for specific people, it's for everybody, because like you say, it doesn't matter
Absolutely.
whether you're disabled or not. Everyone has areas where that they find challenging, because we're all human, aren't we? So it's that universal design piece that's really important to ensure that our processes are including everybody. So yeah.
And it's true, isn't it? It's we're all, who said this the other day? We're all temporarily able-bodied. I don't like the word able-bodied, but basically we are only temporary in that state. It doesn't last for long, so enjoy it while you've got it. So Tudor, in terms of with young epilepsy, would you recommend, if people come to you and say do it, would you say yeah, definitely do it, or would you go, blimey, it was really hard work, I'm not sure it was worth the effort?
No, I would say it's definitely worth doing. I think a benefit I found is, in a way, when we started, I mean, when I started in only 2 years ago, we were just Disability Confident Committed, the first one.
Yeah.
And within sort of just over a year, we went all the way to Disability Confident Leader. So we went through it quite quickly. But what I found is that it looks okay at the beginning, but I think the more you dig down, the more you find, the more you uncover, the more you find needs to be done, the more sort of things that you're missing. Staff, I think once they get there, it starts building psychological safety for staff. So then staff start trusting you more, which is something that we're finding hugely at the moment, that staff are now feeling safer to be able to tell us what their concerns are. Actually,
Wow.
things that were missed when they first started, because we didn't have that, the things like Angelica was saying in place when people start, that they've been struggling with. They've been here with us for a long time. They're sort of finally able to come to us now to tell us, actually, I've been struggling with this for the last 2 years. Can I now have some support? So it's massively helping us change the culture, really, of the whole organization. And it is hard. And I think even once you get the accreditation, it doesn't just, once you get your
It
leader
doesn't stop,
status,
does
it
it?
doesn't stop. It's
Continuous.
yeah, it's still ongoing, and we're still uncovering things, and we're still working on things. And I think the more you get into it, actually, the more you're uncovering. I think if we had just stayed disability confident, committed, we would be sitting there still thinking everything's fine and we're
Well,
doing
that's a really
this.
important point, though, Tudor. It really is. And it's the crux
Yeah,
of everything, is to say that it is a journey, that you need
yeah.
that continuous improvement. It's like anything in life, like we were talking about Tudor's wonderful green fingers, if you can see behind her all the plants. Both Angelica and I are plant murderers. Tudor is a nurturer, which is wonderful to see. But you've got to keep going on these kind of journeys, because the reality is if you want to support your staff, if you want to retain them, you want to recruit good people, then you've got to have a genuine share and tell environment, not disclosure, not declare, try and move away to a softer language, because we're all human. Do you know what? It is in a combative environment. The only time it becomes combative is if you're not giving that person what they need in terms of safety, in terms of the tools they need to be shining and productive. And it must have changed the productivity of some of your people, Tudor, for example, who've kind of like muddied along the bottom, which a lot of us will recognize. We'll all have team members that are kind of, they're okay. And when they shine, blimey, they're really bright. But often that's dimmed light. So how can we make them do that more of the time? Not all of the time, but more of the time.
Yeah.
So you must have noticed an increase in productivity.
Yeah, definitely. I think that we've just one our college has just had their Ofsted inspection, and they've just been voted outstanding, like
Oh,
they
wow.
seen as outstanding by Ofsted, which is a fantastic, and I think that's a physical way, a really clear way that you can see the improvement, and that's down to the staff. It's down to what the staff are doing. We know that if staff are happy where they are going to be more productive. If they're feeling valued, they're going to want to put more of themselves into their jobs. And that is just sort of one example of actually how much of a difference it's making to the organisation that the college is now an outstanding provision.
Well, I mean, that is amazing and well done. Congratulations. I mean, they were talking about that on the news this morning as well, that the government's going to stick with the outstanding good or go home, because it really wasn't worth the effort. So it's really nice to know that this is playing a part in actually helping the young people that you're working with as well, because you've got a more engaged workforce. So you've got your trustees joining in more, your managers joining in more, being more aware, more trained up. And that's really impacting on the young people that you're supporting. So it's a real win-win all round on that. And I think for you, Angelica, that you can quite clearly see that you're attracting the right people to your business with the right messaging, and you're keeping them, aren't you? I mean, I think your attrition rate is like, did she?
Yeah, so again, that we did have some turnover, but what we've done is kind of just whittle down, listen to the voice of the employee and make those changes. We've looked at our website. There's still work to be done. I'm working with our marketing team on our website as well. So but we've had accessibility done on our website. So there's lots of ongoing pieces that are constantly being done. But Rome wasn't built in a day. So I think it's just being comfortable with the fact that this is continuous. It's continuous improvement all the time. And we'll never be perfect, because nobody is perfect. But what we can only strive to be is, a good organisation that, when people come through the doors, that they feel supported to work at their best. Because that's all we want to do, is just to support people to work at their best. Because like you say, you see people thrive, you see the energy, you see the passion, and people feel like they can be their authentic selves within the workplace.
So how exciting is that?
Yeah, when they're masking and hiding.
Love it.
And having to, so I just think it's just worth doing as on an organizational level, but also on a human level. 100%.
Absolutely. And it is the human bit we're talking about.
Yeah.
Take aside the money, take aside the time. These are the people that are making your businesses what they are. And actually, I mean, I always use a crap analogy of racehorses. I don't approve of racehorsing. I'm just going to say that up front. However, you buy a racehorse, you've paid an awful lot of money to have that racehorse. Are you going to keep it in your garage and feed it on leftover carrots? I don't think so. So why do we do it with our staff? Because we do that in effect, don't we? But why do we do it? And I think the conscious effort that you put into doing the disability confident leader level 3 means that you're really consciously, exactly what Judah said, is you're digging below the layers. You're not taking that surface thing as read, that's the journey that your colleague will go on. And it's so important to check that the point to point to point. What you said about the website's really important as well, because we find the majority of clients that we deal with that are allegedly, I'm using these words carefully, they're very pro-disability. They want as much disabled talent who can do good work for them in. Their websites are inaccessible. They've actually outsourced it. And Angelica, you mentioned earlier as well about, getting your suppliers to work with you. It's a big part of the disability confident journey is to put it into your procurement. Put a line in there that says, we want you to be DC leaders too. We want you to be at least an equitable experience. We want this. You're the people who are paying them money to provide you with a service. You are allowed to require them to do something that's going to help your fellow man. And if we all do it, if we all join in the effort, actually, we all lift a heavy load. We only have a little bit to lift each. Having said that, I did speak to one of the combined local authorities. So they've got 5 or 6 councils and they're DC leaders. And he said, we've been through the whole process. It's been hugely useful. We've set up some employee resource groups or ERGs. We're starting to learn what our colleagues need. We're starting to look at the suppliers. We're starting to push that back out on our contracts. He said, but I don't think I'd call us leaders.
I think, has Tracy lost?
Yeah, I think she might have frozen.
Yeah. Is she back?
The Wi-Fi must have crashed in the office. We're not in the office, you see. I'm Anna, and Azadeh, who's running the webinar, and Tracy's in the office, so we can't actually, we're working remotely. So we can't do anything at the moment.
She's in Southampton, isn't she? She said.
Yeah.
With lots of snacks.
Came down. Yeah, she came down this morning for a meeting. Yeah, so we just have to keep going until she comes back, which she will. I bet she's gone, oh no.
Shall we see if there's anything in the Q&A? Let's see if there's... Okay, so there's a question here. With learning difficulties, the disability is not obvious, so organisations tend to dismiss support for the employers, and it's difficult to inform them. How can you communicate that easily? So that is a difficult one, because you need to feel psychologically safe, I'd say, and people, if you don't see that, or like I say, for us, we talk about disability confident, we talk about supporting you to work at your best, we talk about providing equipment, and we talk about access to work from the get-go. So hopefully that creates that psychological safety piece, but if you don't feel that is something that you can do, then maybe speaking to a member of your HR team, because HR will provide that support, and they can have that liaison piece for you. Under the Equality Act 2010, you don't have to have a diagnosis, you don't have to have a visible disability, because we know that there's a lot of hidden disabilities, but what if there's a long-term impact that affects you doing your work, then your employers do have a commitment, and they are responsible for supporting you at work. So if you don't feel that you can speak to IT, I'd hope that you could definitely speak to your HR team to support you, or your line manager as well. But an employer does have a duty of care to their employees to support them to work at their best. So if you do have a disability, whether it's visible or not, then you should ask for that support, because you are entitled to it.
Yeah, something that we do as well is if you don't feel comfortable, if you don't feel safe enough going to your line manager or a particular person within HR, we have sort of peer support networks. So we do have people with disabilities that are there, their contact details are available if you just want to speak to someone that's got been through a similar life experience to you. We've sort of got them in all different areas, but if your workplace has got something like that, or if there are just other people around, if you've got employee resource groups, if you go to those groups, there'll be people there that will be able to support you.
Is there another one? I think someone's asked for, Marius has asked for 3 top tips each, things that would make the biggest difference. Do you want to, I don't mind, do you want me to go first or you, Judah?
You go first.
I do feel like the interview questions in advance, I know there's a lot of skepticism from some people in regards to say, well, you can cheat, you've got AI, but what we also do is a task-based part of the interview as well. So you have your interview questions, but then, some people do a presentation of a coaching session. We do like an in-tray exercise. So you do have that balanced approach. But for me, like, I'm not disabled, I'm not neurodivergent, but having the interview questions, I felt really at ease, and it was such a refreshing experience. And we get a lot of feedback just on providing interview questions in advance, because some people aren't great at interviews as it is. So just having that peace of mind so that they can prepare. It's not cheating, like I say, because you have that task-based kind of piece that you have to do. But I think the interviews, I think being transparent as well, so talking about what you do, but also talking about things that you've changed as well, because like I say, we're not perfect, so there are going to be things that haven't worked well previously that we've listened, seen, and got that learning from and made those changes as well. So transparency. And I think the third thing is that commitment piece, continuous commitment. It's not a once every 3-year job. It's continuously. You need to make sure that you're committing to it, and using, like if you're doing it internally, using the voice of your employees, and speaking to your network, your peers as well, to sharing best practice, because within this, hopefully, I've gained a lot of insights from what Tudor does. Hopefully she's gained insight from what we do. So it's about sharing best practice as well, so that we can all, help each other to create those workplaces.
Yeah, lovely. I would say one from me is to keep engagement up with your employees. So as someone like myself that's not disabled, sitting and deciding how we should treat our disabled staff, it's just small things like, as a non-wheelchair user, I may not realise that wheeling your wheelchair along a carpet is really, really difficult. So inviting someone to an interview in a room where it's a long hallway with a piece of carpet, I may not consider that that's a challenge. So we make sure that we hear the voices of our disabled employees, to teach us really the best practice for what we should be doing, to hear, they're the people with the lived experience, they're the people that are going to understand what's going to make the biggest difference. And another one for me is the psychological safety piece. I think has been quite a big one for us. If people don't feel safe, psychologically safe at work, they're not going to give you that feedback. They're not going to want to engage in anything. They're not going to tell you if they're struggling with anything. They're just going to be going along with it. But likewise, if your managers don't feel safe, they can't create a condition for their employees to feel safe. So it's sort of from the top down.
That's a really good point. Apologies, my thing, internet went dead then, and I've got my phone. Meg asked a question on here. I don't know whether you've seen it, about looking about gaining the commitment from the top, and have you had any experience in senior leaders asking for the business case of becoming a disability confident organisation, and what answer would you propose? So you've obviously had the buy-in, both of you.
Yeah.
So what was your answer? Was it even a question?
Not for me, because our founder's got ADHD, our CEO's got dyslexia. There's
They get it.
we have
They
a lot
really
of
get it, don't they?
experience. Yeah, so I'm very lucky in that respect that our senior leadership team, they do a lot of the work themselves as well. So anything I suggest, they're like, yeah, that's fine. So I feel very privileged that I'm in that position. So I know that it's not always the case, and needs to be a lot of buy-in. But using statistics, providing, what's changed in other companies, peer reviews, getting that lived experience piece and using that as part of the proposal, I think would be what I would be trying to do if I was coming up against those barriers.
Thank you. We've got a question here about what are the top 3 challenges that employers face that are stopping them from joining the DC journey or providing reasonable adjustments even. I mean, we hear it very commonly that because people aren't telling, you've created an environment, for example, Angelica, where you're saying we make it as open as possible. So we've got the kind of software that you might need. We're looking at your aptitudes, your general aptitudes when you join, so that we can just facilitate an ease of you working here. But lots of companies don't, and the crunch point for reasonable adjustments, we call them workplace adjustments at Microlink, because quite frankly, the word reasonable, what does that mean? You've actually got rid of all that challenge, haven't you? It's people come in, but when you go into a company where you don't feel psychologically safe, where they've got no understanding, where apparently nobody's disabled, there's barriers to you actually asking for these things. There's awkwardness talking to the line manager about these things. And then again, who's going to pay for it? What if you were that deaf colleague, Tudor? Was there any pushback in terms of providing support workers, providing BSL, maybe providing different kind of Plantronic microphones, etc.? Did you have any pushback?
Yes.
That's a bit rude because I'm now asking about your particular company. But if you don't mind, if you could share, it would be lovely.
No, that's fine. And you know what? Even recently, so even just this week, we've had further issues. So our deaf colleague, one of our deaf colleagues, has interpreters with her on shift all the time. So she works directly with the young people in the residential houses, and she has these group of interpreters that are with her on shift. So they're in the house, and even after 2 years that she's worked with us, someone's raised safeguarding concerns about having the interpreters in the...
like the GDPR stuff with the actual young person as well. Interesting. Interesting.
So we've had a lot of recent pushback actually. So we have just yesterday done some deaf awareness. We got Willed BSL in, who are a local organisation, and we got them to do some deaf awareness training for us, because a lot of staff are expecting her to lip read more often. Which they
not
didn't
easy
realise
to do lip reading.
No, it's exhausting, and
Yeah,
I think they said in the training yesterday that you actually can only pick up sometimes 20% of what's been said. So we do have pushback, and we still have it. But it's just about education, really. That those interpreters have got their DBS along with everybody else. They're just as safe as anybody else.
Absolutely.
So there's no reason why it should be an issue.
I think one of the sessions that we're going on to, I don't know whether it's the next session or the one after, but we will be talking specifically about workplace adjustments, reasonable adjustments, and what you can do. Because again, the more that you get involved in the disability, the more you get involved in understanding the need to make adjustments for people, the more you recognize the familiar patterns that come about. Because what you don't want, which is normally when we get called, is an employer coming in 3 months later, they finish their probation, it's not gone well, and you're going into a performance review, and all of a sudden they go, I forgot to tell you XYZ. And you've got to remember as well that there's so many instances where people don't consider themselves as disabled.
Yeah.
Now, under the Equality Act, I'm disabled. I've got diabetes, heart condition, half a thyroid, and various other bits and pieces. So I qualify. And indeed, most people would, because when it says you have a substantial challenge, substantial actually only means a little bit more than less. So it's a different kind of understanding than I always thought it was. But the reality is if you can get this piece right with the disability confident, if you can engage with your senior managers, have some fantastic stories from people like Angelica and Tudor. And I encourage you to reach out to these companies, not all of you all at once, because Angelica wouldn't thank me for that, and I don't think Tudor would, but their stories of what they've achieved on very small budgets, except for time. That's where the cost is involved. Then if you're linking it up, and as I said, we'll go on to that with reasonable adjustments, but if you link that process up with really good workplace adjustments, some things in-house, so for example, you could have sensory readable across your estate really inexpensively, and then perhaps most people wouldn't have to ask you for adjustments because it's there already on their laptops, which would be great. but make sure that you get your ducks in a row. And this is a cracking way of doing it. The disability confident, the actual form itself, I've seen submissions from as little as 10 pages, which is a little worrying, I'll be honest, up to I've got 2 still to finish at 70 pages. And I'm like, crikey, that's a lot to read through. But I will read through them all, because what I've learned from them has been enormous. And I have to say, government, they are rocking these validations at the moment. They're taking it to heart. So I'd really, really recommend, as with these 2 ladies, that you actually look at what you've got on your own estate. It makes you consciously address what you've got, what you haven't got, where the gaps are, and then look to reach out to people. A lot of free resource on the government website, which will come out. So we're going to wrap up now. I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Angelica, a huge thank you to Tudor. Apologies for me disappearing. It gave you a break from me warbling on. But have a really good afternoon, and I hope this inspires you all to start thinking about signing up. Thank you so much for joining us. Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Everyone, it's really good. Thank you.